and for more than 4 decades, Barry Diller has been one of the most powerful and enigmatic figures in American media. He built studios, influenced television, shaped the early internet, and through it all, kept his personal life tightly sealed. That is, until now. In his upcoming memoir, Who Knew?, the 83-year-old business mogul finally opens the door on one of the most whispered about stories in entertainment: his sexuality and his unconventional love story with fashion icon Diane von Furstenberg. In an excerpt published by New York Magazine, Diller reveals what many had suspected and many more had misunderstood. He writes that until he was 33, he had only been attracted to men. There was no confusion, no hesitation. That was simply his reality. But then he met Diane. The first time they crossed paths, she dismissed him. The second time, everything changed. At a dinner party, something intangible happened. I was instantly bathed in such attention and cozy warmth, he writes. I couldn't believe it was the same woman I'd been dismissed by a year earlier. They spoke alone, on a sofa, surrounded by a kind of emotional electricity. There was a glow around us that was setting off sparks, he recalls, accurately described by the French as a coup de foudre. What followed was not calculation, not internal panic, not questions about what it meant. We wound around each other, making out like teenagers, Diller writes, emphasizing that he hadn't kissed a woman since he was 16. There was no effort, no reasoning, no what's going on here. I was simply existing in the moment. It was, as he describes, a rare and pure emotional state for a man who spent most of his life in relentless strategic control. Diller had never come out publicly, but he also never pretended. I vowed to live with silence, but not with hypocrisy. He writes, I wouldn't do a single thing to make anyone believe I was living a heterosexual life. When his romance with Diane began, it didn't go unnoticed. He was chairman of Paramount Pictures. She was already a fashion world superstar. They were high-profile, successful, and clearly enamored with each other. People talked. We thought he liked only men, some whispered. The tabloids speculated, the public raised eyebrows. But as Diller bluntly notes, much of the speculation subsided when it was clear to all we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Their relationship evolved, like many great ones do. They lived together, they broke up. In 1981, Diane had an affair with actor Richard Gere, and the relationship fractured. But 10 years later, she returned. Another 10 years passed, and they were married. The public, however, continued to cling to old narratives. Even as they built a life together, raised families, and built empires, the world insisted on labeling their bond as just friends. Diller pushes back hard. We weren't just friends. We aren't just friends. Plain and simple, it was an explosion of passion that kept up for years, he writes. And yes, I also liked guys, but that was not a conflict with my love for Diane. He doesn't use terms like gay or bisexual. He rejects those constraints. Instead, he celebrates the growing acceptance of fluid identities and emotional complexity. He points out that Europeans have always had a more open view of love, one not bound by binaries. Sexual identities today are much more fluid and natural, he writes, without all those rigidly defined lanes of the last century. There's also a quiet defiance in his reflections. Diller mentions how male athletes, like soccer players, often pick up new accents when they move between countries or teams. No one questions their authenticity. Yet when Hilaria Baldwin, or in his case, a man loving both men and a woman, expresses identity in ways that defy the norm, the backlash is instant. I am not a male soccer player, Diller says dryly, highlighting the double standard. What makes his story extraordinary is its rejection of societal expectations. He doesn't write with apology, justification, or labels. He simply tells the truth, that he loved men and that he also loved Diane. Deeply, physically, emotionally. That their relationship, despite how unconventional it may appear to others, is and has always been real. Diller's memoir is not just about sexuality. It's about intimacy, about time, about choosing a life that doesn't fit a script. At its heart is a statement many couples will understand, even if their circumstances differ. It is the bedrock of my life, he writes. What others think sometimes irritates but mostly amuses us. We know, our family knows, and our friends know. The rest is blather. For a man whose empire has always been built on controlling stories, from studios to streaming, Diller's own story, at last, is untamed, human, and defiantly his.